We have to frame reality, so to speak, because it's a lot very ambiguous what reality is in context of education.
Part of my job is to try to prepare people professionally, not just academically. This whole process that we're engaged in here is to assist students in preparing to be better professionals, more effective professionals, more accomplished professionals. You can't do that being silent. And indeed,
I try to make my students aware of all the politics involved in teaching. You know, it's like, you know, don't think when you go in to be a teacher that you're going to be free of these issues. You're always going to have to be held accountable to parents and then to your administration, to your principal. So that part of it comes across kind of negative because a lot of our students don't want to hear that. I think a lot of college students, in a sense, they're interested in politics, but they sort of are wary of thinking in terms of the polarization that's happened in this country. They always get a response. Why can't we do both? Why can't we have progressive education and sort of standardized assessment? Isn't there any?
Here we have the purpose-centered education. The students are they have a perspective on life that other students don't. A lot of them are not shy in expressing their views, they're not reluctant in expressing their views. There is a constructive action that students are engaged in, and each semester they're supposed to progress in that. And they're supposed to integrate their work experience with the theory or the more abstract concepts we give them in class. I have encountered anxiety in academia around whether what we give is relevant. Mm-hmm.
It's always had this progressive history behind it. I think Dewey and Paulo Freire were the ones who really sort of coalesced Audrey Cohen's ideas, you know, about how to provide this kind of education. And that's all self-directed stuff, you know. Dewey was into progressive techniques like cooperative learning and the idea of constructing your own knowledge. Students are capable of constructing their own knowledge. But it's a political issue. It always has been. Dewey's progressive ideas were widely attacked in World War II and the Cold War. I'm very unhappy with authoritarian approaches. There's some subjects that just require standardized, pedagogy and assessment, like, you know, things like history and math are just things you have to know. So in that case, yeah, then you bring in the more lecture format. But in most cases in human services, what we're trying to accomplish is that rapport with the client. So actually having student-centered teaching sort of prepares our population to go into the different human service agencies and be more like be more client-centered. If you let students self-direct their learning, that in some people's minds, that diminishes the role of the teacher. You know, you get constant criticism of teachers these days. They're too progressive, they're letting students do cooperative stuff, there's no way to assess it. No, listen, there are ways to assess self-directed learning. They're not quite as clear as a subject that lends itself to a standardized test. But you're always going to have that ambiguity when you're dealing with people. I mean, some people are just...
The thing is kind of like, you know, you have someone who says, you know, I want to play basketball and I can jump and I can run and, you know, do these things. Okay, well, now we have to put that into some context so that those skills and that desire and that ability is able to be recognized and useful within the context of being a basketball player or being an MPA candidate, as the case may be. I think it's so. Yeah, I mean, I'd say that students are self-directed, but I think that, you know, there's a definite need for the kind of focus, the kind of direction, the encouragement and the challenging that I think students have to be challenged to do better. You know, I think all of us do. I think, you know, and we try to provide that motivation. I think it's very important that someplace along the line there's interaction, certainly with the instructor, with the other students. I think, you know, I think in many ways the students are the instructor's partner in teaching, which is to say that I may be running the class, but I do expect that the students, with their questions, their comments, their involvement, really help to expand upon the learning process, enhance the learning process. I really think a 100-minute lecture is not exactly the best way to learn things. We need to be able to come up with some kind of, you have to be able to synthesize ideas and concepts that are being articulated. Self-directed learning, I think, has its place. I think certainly in terms of, as I said, factual input, but I think that the classroom setting, whether it's traditional or all the different ways it can be done technologically these days, is extremely valuable.
So I had one request by students who couldn't take my operation management class, and the schedule didn't work out so he requested to have the class virtually. So we had the session on Skype. So I worked with him privately in a way for the whole semester, and that was a good experience. Learn to work better with the students, to also deflect back and suggest how they'll communicate the same information in a more professional way. So part of the
I've struggled with assessment. How do you assess things like class participation and self-directed learning? I have a problem in general with assessment. I think assessment is a real problem if you're at all progressive as an institution. It's a cinch if you're traditional, because you give multiple choice tests. With self-directed, it's harder. But on the other hand, it's better because they learn more, they're more enthusiastic, and they put more energy into it. I would say it would be any kind of learning process that takes place mainly in the student, and as a result of the student's thinking and activities, rather than something that just happens as a transaction with the teacher. So if you have a teacher who is, say, lecturing and not permitting questions, obviously that's the opposite, because it's sort of it's a one-way trip of knowledge, of information, and the student remains passive. But
I guess what the synonym would be, autodidactism. I guess you could teach yourself, you could learn on your own, and I think that can be useful to the extent that you're talking about a factual input. That you can read a book, and I can read a book, and I can tell you dates, names, times, places. Whether I can then provide some kind of general framework for what was happening, what other trends were going on, why these dates, times, and places are important in some not only in terms of the context of the events themselves, but in terms of a larger historical framework. I think that's harder to do, and just on one's own. I think it's very important.
From my perspective, it has to do with learning that's relevant to the subject that's learning. So it's self-directed in the sense that we inquire as teachers what is relevant for them and try to marry that with the concepts we bring. But somehow the learning path has to go from the students outward as opposed to the other way, which is other-directed. Other-directed would be, this is the curriculum, this is what you have to know. We don't ask you if you like it or not. This is not a democracy. Don't bring your creativity or ideas. Just learn it, do well on the exam. You get a good degree, goodbye.
My name is Estelle Walker, the MPA program, Masters of Public Administration. When I entered this program, I had set goals in mind that I wanted to meet. I would like to start my own organization, and I knew that the program here had the skill, would give me the skills that I needed. In undergrad, no, you were just a number. My chemistry class in particular, that I was one of 120 students. So you came in, you had your assignment, you did the assignment, that's it. You couldn't go to your teacher and said you had a problem, and he was too busy.
When you have something that you need to know and There's no teacher, you have to find out by yourself. So personally, self-directed learning is taking responsibility. Someone says, read a couple pages in this book. Read the whole chapter. In terms of education, self-directed learning can be, instead of sitting there and being directed and lectured and spoken at, maybe communication is open and opportunity is available for self-discovery. So the teacher is not as much of a teacher, and she's more of a facilitator, and she can facilitate the discussion to go in a way that the students come to their own concept and their own understanding. So she's not really giving them fixed things to learn. They're coming into their own opinion, their own interpretation of their own learning.
Interesting. And you feel like
I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to organize myself.
Mm-hmm.
So my other professors, they make sure I'm leading and not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I would get an email, maybe you need to brush up with add more to your literature review. Not making a suggestion. Maybe you should look at Erickson or Piaget, or they're just simple suggestions, and from there that's where I go.
We appreciate in the classes when it's more of a discussion. The teachers here are phenomenal, and they don't just teach you the subject. They teach you how to be better thinkers. It's just kind of understood that things are learned through conversation and through debate and through experience. My name is Diana Garfinkel. I'm a graduate student at the MS Education, Childhood Education 1 through 6 program. I wanted to find a school that was more hands-on. Here, it's multidimensional, where you go from theory to real life